Welcome to the Start Strong, Finish Strong podcast with Greg Weiss. In this episode, I sat down with Simon Tufrey, Human Resources Director, Australia, New Zealand and Fiji at Wyndham Destinations. Simon is recognised as one of the leading HR managers in Australia at the moment. We discuss the impact that mental health initiatives can have on a business, among other things. Let's get into it. Hey there, and welcome to another episode of Start Strong, Finish Strong with Greg Weiss. And I'm delighted today to have as my guest in the studio, sort of a studio, it's a working from home type environment, Simon Tufrey. And I've known Simon for quite some years. I'm delighted to have him on the show. Simon is the Human Resources Director, South Pacific for Wyndham Destinations Asia Pacific. And he's got a really interesting story. But one of the reasons why I asked Simon to come on is he's, among other things, because of the work he's been doing, he's been nominated as the HR Manager of the Year for the Australian Human Resources Industry Awards. So Simon, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me, Greg.
Delighted to see. Sorry?
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here with you.
Well, it's wonderful to have you here as well, actually. Simon, so we've known each other over the years, and I've known you when you were here in New South Wales, Sydney itself, and then you moved up to Queensland for this particular opportunity. And I thought, frankly, why don't we actually just get to have the audience get to meet you, understand a little bit about your journey. Just how did you get to Queensland? What was your backstory leading up to to Queensland?
Thanks, Greg. Look, I think, firstly, I do want to be clear that I'm still a New South Wales Blues supporter. So although I've changed geographical location, the heart's definitely with New South Wales.
What do they say? You can take the boy out of the country, you can't take the country out of the boy, so to speak, or whatever the saying is, right?
That's it. And actually, when you talk about the country, I mean, in terms of my background, I was actually born in a town called Tamworth, which many of you may know is the country music capital of Australia. So my twin sister and I were the first two in our family to take on a tertiary education. So I guess we broke the mold a little bit for our family, and I went to the University of New England in a little town called Armidale, which is an hour and a half from Tamworth, so pretty close to home. You know, I didn't want to be too far away from the parents, and completed a Bachelor of Arts and a law degree as well during my time there. And I guess I had ambitions to pursue a legal career earlier on. And I think I'm one of the lucky ones who perhaps realised pretty early that wasn't really for me. And with my personal value set and the like, I found my way to Sydney. And I took on a graduate role in a small boutique law firm within a HR consulting practice. And it was via that opportunity that my eyes were open to human resources as a career. And I guess again, realizing law wasn't for me, I found a very willing managing director in that business that gave me the chance to jump across to the consulting arm of that company. And it was really from there that I guess I just sort of naturally fell into HR and fell in love with the industry and what contribution we can make to organizations. And so after a stint there, I then moved into in-house HR in a hospitality company called Toga, based in Sydney. That's where we met, Greg.
That's correct.
A few years ago, yeah. Mm-hmm. And following that, I took on a national people and capability manager role within the Steadfast Group, who's an ASX-listed insurance firm. Mm-hmm. Spent almost 2 years to the day with that business, but the phone rang and an ex-boss of mine actually had a proposition that was a bit too good to refuse at the time, and that was a director of HR role based on the sunny Gold Coast. And that's how I guess ended up crossing the border and moving myself and a young family up to the Goldie. And we've been here for around 2.5 years now. And look, missed a lot of aspects of Sydney and the culture and the pace. But on the flip, I'm a country boy at heart, and my wife's from the Hunter, and I think we saw a great sea change and green change with my career opportunities. So we took that jump, and we're very privileged to be able to live in a beautiful part of the world.
Lovely, lovely. So it's nice to actually hear your story, the offer that you couldn't refuse from your boss, As long as there was no horse's head like in The Godfather, then I'm sure you would have been happy. Well and truly. So Simon, so you joined Wyndham Destinations, and you're HR director of the South Pacific part. Just a quick story about Wyndham Destinations, because it's not everybody knows who the company is.
No, and I think when I explain a bit about the business, it may make a little bit more sense to listeners. But I guess Wyndham Destinations holistically is a global business, US-based corporate head office globally in Orlando, Florida. And the business as a whole is the world's largest vacation ownership and exchange company. And our core belief as a business is about putting the world on vacation and enabling families to create memories that last a lifetime. So US-based business, been around for a long time, and globally there's around, I think, 21,000 employees within the organisation globally. In Asia Pacific, we have our own operations spanning across 9 countries, including, and I look after some operations from an HR perspective across Australia, New Zealand and Fiji. We have around 2,000 employees within the region as a whole. There's around 1,400 to 1,500 within my remit. And we support a network of 51 vacation ownership resorts and a series of pure play hotels on top of that as well. Right. With a corporate head office based on the Gold Coast. And there's no better place to be honest, for that type of setting. I really loved the pace and the dynamic nature of Sydney, right? And I certainly miss a lot of that. But being able to have a Sydney-style job based on the Gold Coast is pretty special. So it's a very good company. We've been operating since the year 2000 in the region. So our 20th anniversary was this year. Nice.
And so some of the brands that people would recognise, Simon, just some of the property brands.
Oh yeah, sure. So some of we've got Wyndham properties themselves, so that they'll have Wyndham in their name. So there's a series of those across the region. Ramada is another fairly known brand, so we have some interest in that particular brand as well.
Right. Yep.
And then there's some vacation club property, also property groups, predominantly based overseas, away from our region as well, which fall into other brands. Shell Vacation Club, Margaritaville, very US centric to be honest in that instance, but really Wyndham, based properties or Wyndham name properties, as well as Ramada, are the 2 real standout brands within our particular region. You can see around the capital cities and in regional centres throughout Australia.
Now, you were really good at being able to enunciate the intention or the mission of the organisation about creating memorable holidays. Can you just say that again for the listeners, please?
Oh, yeah, sure. I guess the core of what we do, it's about putting the world on vacation and enabling families to create memories that last a lifetime. It's a known thing in our company.
He knows it. He knows it real well. And so this is really interesting because you've been nominated for this award, and this is, vacations, holidaying, COVID. This is really not an easy time for the business. It's not an easy time at the best of times for the business. It's quite a fickle business. But this time around, you're really at the more or less like the front line of the impact of COVID. So tell me about what it's been like.
Yeah. It's been very interesting, and I mean anyone that's listening will know that there've been a lot of ups and downs probably for all of us, and for any organisation that we happen to be part of. I think I speak for the hospitality industry as a whole when I say this. Really, behind the airlines, we were probably the next major industry that was immediately impacted by the impacts of the pandemic, right? It goes without saying that if you don't have that freedom of movement, that is really at the heart of being able to travel and actually enjoy a stay somewhere or a vacation and time with your family, any restriction on that is obviously going to have an immediate impact. So when COVID hit, I guess sort of in Australia in March and really gained legs, I happened to be away on vacation with my family in Bali, and Scott Morrison started, some press conferences while we're over there talking about the impacts of COVID within Australia, and we were a bit naive to it. My wife and myself, we were a little bit nervous about getting back into the country, but we sort of then realised with common sense that we're Australian citizens. We'll be able to get home, but So I guess, look, we were over there when things really kicked off. And then I returned to Australia, and the week I returned, which was mid-March, and my first Monday back in the business, we closed down our resort operations and sales operations, and a large chunk of our corporate office as well, pretty much in the early part of that week. And that was predominantly because of border restrictions, and it really left us hamstrung to be able to actually operate our properties and deliver a great guest experience. Guests couldn't really stay. I think we still had some, that would have been seeing out their vacations at that point or holidays, but there was a reality, right, that once you start closing state borders and obviously international travel, it's going to have an impact. So it was very swift for us as a business, and it really led to a period of tumultuousness for us, if there's such a word.
I'm sure.
The turmoil is the word we want.
So let me just to hop in there. So you closed the operations. You actually physically closed the properties that you were, okay. All right.
Yeah, so basically. I mean, you still manage the properties. So there's certain agreements with owners, for example, or certain building management requirements to keep the lights on, if you will. But from a guest-facing perspective, we completely closed our operations down.
Right.
And so far in March, that was region-wide.
And so that was tumultuous, and I hopped in there. So come back to your tumultuous, and then I interrupted you, but I just want to make sure about the operations.
No, it's all good, Greg. Look, with that, I guess, so, you can imagine that was a very difficult decision to make, and had a really substantial impact on a number of our employees. So, at that time, it was sort of, siege mentality and trying to protect the organisation and protect, and I'm talking about the safety of our staff and the safety of our guest base in relation to that.
And that was the main first priority, was to protect the safety of the staff.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And that's a maintained core priority for our organisation as we speak right to this day. Our managing director, Barry Robinson, with a lot of town halls and key communications across the business, certainly in that early period, it was about looking after ourselves, looking after each other and our families. And that was a really, I think a really fantastic silver lining to a difficult situation, and I'll come back to that in terms of maybe how our business has adapted itself a little bit and changed its spot slightly. But you can appreciate a close down of major operations. At that time, we didn't know what were, JobKeeper didn't exist, and we didn't know what the potential was for government support. We were very fortunate to be able to access that scheme, and that was an absolute godsend for our employees. You can imagine casualised workforce, hospitality sector. It's not necessarily the highest paying industry. It's very much a passion-based industry. So being able to achieve that and secure that for our business was actually really satisfying. And if you couldn't feel a sense of reward for the effort of getting that initiated for staff, I don't think you're in the right job from a HR perspective. So we worked hard to get that in place. There was inevitable restructures that had to occur as well, and we did that in June predominantly in our business. So we made some hard decisions. That was on the back of similar exercises in organisations like Virgin. It goes without saying, airlines are first out, and then from a hospitality perspective, we had to right-size the business a little bit and make some hard decisions, which, again, very difficult for our team and for myself to have to work through those hard conversations. And subsequent to that, we've been now looking at the reopening process, closed down again in Melbourne and Victoria, which was absolutely, horrific, I think, for us personally, to see staff that we just gotten back into the workplace, put back out into a really difficult, isolated circumstance. And but there's light at the end of the tunnel, and I think we're federal budget last week, the weather's getting better, case counts, it's steady enough at the moment. I think we're moving towards a new plane and a better place. And now our business feels it, and we're definitely, I think, looking forward as opposed to thinking about COVID day in and day out. It's not really in our mantra and our way of thinking at the moment.
It's not. COVID's not in your way of thinking day in, day out now.
No, it's kind of back to normal in terms of operations. I mean, we're still restricted and limited in what we can and can't do. You know,
Yeah.
your occupancy rates in resorts,
Yeah.
putting in place the right protocols.
Yeah.
You know, some of those border restrictions still have a bearing and still have an impact. But you know, our staff are back at work in almost every instance, making a contribution, and we're finding ways to, I guess, try and navigate the organisation through what the near future needs to look like.
So I'm just curious to drill down a little bit more on this, and that is that at the early stages, when you decided to close the operations, you stood people down, or was it a stand down, or was it another scenario?
Yeah, it was effectively a stand down, Greg.
Right.
So, I mean, we just, it wasn't feasible to operate at the
Yeah.
time. So yeah, it was those hard decisions that had to
Yeah.
be made as well in that instance.
And just as a, did you just expect that with staff being stood down, this is like you didn't give them any expectations about what you expected them to do whilst stood down? Did you was it just free for them to work out what they were going to do, or did you have an agenda for them to do something whilst they were stood down?
No, I think, look, in a lot of the roles, there was an inability to actually fulfill, you know, the inherent requirements of the job, right? So I think in those instances, it was about, you know, people stepping away from the business, and you know, that's a challenge because
Yeah.
you want to maintain continuity and connection into the organisation. And so
Yeah.
part of our initial work in that period was really about maintaining connection with our staff and
How did you do
keeping
that,
them
Simon?
abreast.
How'd you keep in touch with them whilst they were stood down?
Yeah, from a company perspective, we really set about putting in place a robust communication plan to ensure that we maintained a level of connection with our people who were out of the workplace. And I think what was really important about that was that it was a dedicated, committed process that was led by the senior leadership team within our business. And I think one of the really interesting learnings for our organisation was that process has been a bit like the unpeeling of an onion. So what we've actually seen is, you know, a real, you know, kind of, I guess, you know, peeling back of the layers of our leaders within the organisation to really see the person that sits behind the corporate facade of some of our senior leaders, including our managing director. And I think that's been really well received by our employee base. You know, in a time where, ironically, we feel as though we're perhaps dehumanized because we're sitting out in a work from home environment or away from our social connections at work. We actually saw the flip in our business, where we actually saw a real level of authenticity around our leaders, that human element coming to the fore, and that actually, as I mentioned, I think it's been well received by our organisation. And there's a little bit of a change in perhaps the way that our leaders have communicated in recent times, which we're going to continue with moving forward as an organisation, because it's as I said, it's really peeled back the layers, and it's created a strong sense of bond and connection between associates at all levels within the business, right through to our managing director.
Right. And associates, just for the listening audience, associates is another word for?
Oh, just for our team members. Yeah,
Right.
it's so it's a very American term, but it's one that we use within Wyndham when we're referring to our own.
Right. And so yeah, frontline hotels, accommodation, holidaying, frontline problems, Simon, impacted by COVID, big problems there. You really had to, it's like with everybody else, we were pretty much muddling through things.
Yeah.
So you stood people down, and you've now, half a year later, more or less, bringing people back, much more positive. And in between all that, you've been nominated for this amazing award, being HR Manager of the Year with the Australian Human Resources Awards. What were the programs that were recognised that have been such that you are now nominated?
Yeah, with that, Greg, it's probably more about what's been done, you know, the year prior to COVID than what it is about what's actually happened since
Good point.
March
Good point.
this year. So,
Yep. So
Yeah, and the first thing I will say is that it's an awesome honour to receive even just a nomination, but it's about the team and it's about what the team who I have the pleasure of leading and working with have done that actually has led to that nomination. So we've got a very collegiate, very transparent, open kind of team way of working, and it's really something where I feel we've all bought into. But look, in terms of key initiatives, probably the one to highlight more than anything else is that as an organisation, we've taken a really keen interest and strategic interest in mental health within our workplace, and many other great organisations are certainly doing the same thing. But in terms of our journey with that, towards the back end of 2018, so I was say 6 months into the job, new to the gig and finding my way around, but we'd started some conversations around sort of mental health within our workplace. It's a high pressure environment in a lot of respects. We've got a very dynamic and robust sales kind of operation within our business that obviously it's very target driven, metric driven, and it can create a lot of stress, right, in that type of environment. And so we sort of identified, certainly, and it's not, I don't think it's just a Wyndham thing. I think any company needs to do this, but we saw a real opportunity to move beyond just pure wellness and physical wellness in our kind of health and well-being kind of strategy. And we've taken a dedicated approach over the last 18 months to mental health. And what we did was engage with an external psychologist to help guide the way a little bit with creating our own in-house mental health awareness learning initiative for leaders and also for associates as a whole, right? So a two-pronged program and dedicated process that we've implemented successfully across the region. And that's our own IP. We actually, as a team, our HR team, facilitate and deliver that program. And I think really on the back of that, what's actually transpired is something that is transformational. It's not just about mental health in the workplace. What we've been able to do is really tap into the importance of a focus on mental wellness and looking out for each other and colleagues and leaders looking out for their team members. And that's transformed into people's lives, I think, in the way that they also self-care outside of work and have potentially hopefully supported with navigating through the challenges with COVID as well. So that was probably our kind of key pillar last year in terms of a really significant achievement in our business. And that was to the point where somewhere to the tune of 80% of our workforce had sat in on a really robust mental health awareness program and went away with skills, guides and information and support mechanisms to know what to do if they happen to be feeling that they're struggling at the moment. And we use the Are You OK Day conversational model as part of that training as well. And why not use the very best in the business to deliver on that? And we've continued that focus this year with the impacts of COVID, and we've even last month we had a real heavy focus on mental health again with our workforce coming back to work, and we delivered a really strong awareness week program, including panel discussions and education and various yoga and other wellness initiatives to focus on people's mental health as well as we continue to navigate these times. So very proud of it.
I'm sure. And so, just what were the elements of the program? There were conversations, like "Are you okay?" What were the other elements?
Yeah. So look, that's one element. We also, I guess, really importantly, we don't in that program we really peel back the layers. Again, talking about an onion, it's a terrible metaphor, but. Yeah, I guess we pull back the hood on mental health in Australia, for example, for our Australian associates and kind of lay it out, what are the current trends in our society and then how does that, transition into our workplaces? And I guess with our leaders, there was there's a real focus in that program on what we as leaders can do for our teams. What can we be doing around job design, team and group dynamics, organizational factors to create a really mentally safe workplace and, having dedicated plans and processes to deliver on that. And then looking at the conversational side, if you how to identify if somebody is potentially struggling, what could be the signals, whether it's psychological or physical, behavioral. And then once you've maybe identified those things, how do you start that really important conversation to connect with that individual? And if that person does disclose that they're having a tough time, what support mechanisms and referral options do you have as a leader? Because none of us are mental health experts, and we're not medically educated around that. But I think all of us, from a human to human perspective, can support each other and help each other out, and then support that referral if required onto medical services, GP, our EAP service that we have within the business, etc.
Yeah. And so how has a priority of mental health shifted the culture within the organisation?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question, Greg, because I think the proof in the pudding has probably been COVID and how we've navigated that. And it's hard to get a litmus test of how does one organisation compare to another. So I don't think it's appropriate to do that here. But I think on our own probably internal measure of how we've coped as a business and been able to adapt and deal with the unknown, right? I mean, I think we all appreciate that we're all learning as we go here at the moment and still kind of finding our way and feeling our way through things. But yeah, with that, I think that the work that we've done around mental health has really built a resilient workforce, first and foremost. And I think more importantly, it's a workforce where, the stigma around mental health is being broken down, right? I had a leader after we did some work last month on this sort of mental health awareness week initiative, which was really dedicated, full week of activity. I had a leader who I know pretty well in the business sort of reach out to me and just say, look, Simon, you cannot measure how important this initiative has been for our organisation. I want you to know that there are leaders and there are individuals now in our business who are having conversations, looking after each other, checking in with each other, and there's a culture emerging of humanity, I guess, and care, genuine care, not just focusing on the day-to-day rigors of the job. And, we're actually genuinely looking out for each other. And it feels special when you're part of a business that's like that. It's hard to bottle what that actually feels like, but it's just very special and rewarding when you're told those things and it's organic, right? It's not a HR initiative. We've maybe put some tools in place to support the business to start that journey, but it's the organisation as a whole, and it's the quality of the people in this business that have actually taken that forward.
Well, I would imagine that given that there's much more of a collegiate, caring, compassionate, among other things, way of interacting with each other, that's also got to play out very well for the customer experience. So are there any metrics? Have you seen anything that's gone on around this wonderful bedrock of care and support in the mental health area and a translation through to the customer experience?
Yeah. I think, Greg, look, absolutely. There's an inherent link between those things, right? And I think, we in our business, and I think it's like any good hospitality company, I mean, you overlay your company mission and your values with, a customer value proposition as well. And I guess what you stand for as a company in terms of your guest experience. And, we've got a very robust philosophy around that. This idea of putting the world on vacation, it's not just words. There's a genuine inherent link our people feel to that. And it's an emotive link to some extent, right? So I think, that was already in place. And I guess what the mental health awareness piece does for us is it actually transitions for our associates who are on the front line, maybe, an awareness of those around them, whether it's employees or guests, in terms of how guests are feeling, right? And actually taking the time to have those more kind of what you call caring conversations or more human conversations, not just transactional hotel conversations. Yeah. So I think it's probably transferred or translated itself in that way. But I think also it's about the wellness of your workforce, right? Like if you're physically well and if you're mentally well, you're going to be more productive. You're more happier. Your demeanor is strong, and you've got a great personal brand that you bring to the table. And I mean, we all know when we walk into a hotel or a resort that front desk experience, that first 10-second interaction, the moment that you say, I'm here to check in,
Absolutely.
that can make or break your whole experience of the holiday, right? And if that starts well, um, you're going to have a good time and you're going to really enjoy yourself, and it's going to be a lasting memory for you and your family in terms of your travel, right? So
Absolutely.
it's all connected, no doubt.
And it sounds like it was very somewhat fortuitous that you'd laid that bedrock, that foundation ahead of what has been a very, very unusual 2020 with the whole COVID side of things. So more mental resilience, more awareness around mental health created that internal buffer for each person in the team and the organization to be able to withstand these things, withstand a pandemic. I'm wondering, so well done on that, Simon, really fantastic. And it's so anybody who's listening and who has the opportunity to bring something like a resilience program into the organization, it's not just fluff, but it really does help engender a deeper culture of collaboration and care and greater productivity, greater customer experience. I'd like to just circle back to a couple of things because it has been such an unusual year, and being in the holiday destination type business, being on the front line, I'm wondering if you think of some of the things, heaven forbid we have more of a pandemic or something like this ever happens again with some major shock, what is it that you would do again that you've done now? What have you learned and you say, yep, we did the right thing here?
Yeah. There's probably two things I'd highlight, Greg. I mean, I touched on the communication piece earlier, and I think it's that old mantra, you can never communicate enough. And I think in a time of, turmoil, uncertainty, if you can provide a level of certainty, some type of comfort, I think that's a really good thing. And I think if I just kind of circle back on that for a moment, one thing I didn't mention earlier was that, really importantly around that authenticity piece, it wasn't just about opening up a bit from a personal perspective and breaking down the barriers between, say, corporate and the person behind the individual within the business. I think also, really crucially, we were very transparent, very open, and very honest. So if we didn't know something, we didn't know it, and we said as much to the business. I mean, I think you've just got to be straight. If time, we were very clear that we don't know when we're going to be able to reopen our resorts and our operations, until we had a bit more certainty, right? But what we did give was an assurance that the moment that we do know, we're going to let you know, and we're going to start a process to get you back to work and, build that kind of excitement and the end game, right? I mean, I think the last thing you want to do is build false expectations and then not meet them, right? Because that's a major setback, I think, particularly when it's a crisis type scenario. So I think we kind of applied really good communication principles, right, from top to bottom in the business. And I think that's one thing that, irrespective of a pandemic, any company can really always look to improve the way they communicate, and we're still doing that literally to this day, as a business, trying to find better ways, enhanced ways to connect with our people and keep them informed of what they need to know. So I think that's one thing, I certainly would bottle up. And I think, decisiveness is so critical. If you've got to make the hard calls, you've got to make the hard calls. And I think we, as a business, it's never good having to restructure, for instance, right? And look, I personally felt it, having to work through that process from a HR perspective with impacted employees, and our leaders felt it too, right? It was one of those uncomfortable must-dos that none of us want to do ever in our jobs, but it's a bit like the police who turn up to a crime scene. You've got to do what you've got to do. It's your job, right? But the one thing I will say that I think was really, again, probably a positive around the difficult decisions is that we made the tough calls, and we went about doing it and delivering on that. And, we didn't sort of go half-hearted. I think when the decision was made, for instance, that, hey, we're going to have to close these sites down, we didn't mess around. We got it done. We let team members know. We tried to provide whatever support we could. And then similarly with the restructuring, we, executed that process actually pretty effectively, considering what it was and the scale of it. But, I felt it was well handled, and we, were really clear. I think we were open and honest with the business as well prior to that about where we were. We said things aren't going to be the same there's going to be impacts on our company. We don't necessarily know exactly what they are right now, but we will inform you when we can. And I think, we were decisive, and I think that decisive leadership, and again, that provides a level of certainty and a sense of direction in a time where there's just a lack of direction or in all parts, right? Whether it's social,
I think what I'm hearing from you is also about the authenticity and the vulnerability that you were prepared, that leadership was prepared to be vulnerable, and based on that vulnerability, it became a much more authentic way of communicating, to the point where you mentioned earlier on about you want to retain some of this use your term, peel back the onion and see the real person. So the authenticity was there. I just getting towards the end of our time together, I'm curious about what it looks like for the business towards the back end of 2020, moving into 2021. What are the challenges? What's it going to be looking like?
Yeah, well, look, there's still that crystal ball, right, with borders, and I think there was a point there I felt we were a little bit border obsessed as a company, right, and airline obsessed, because I think that, I put it this way, the moment that airlines start operating again, there's a natural, it's almost like the pasture starts to regrow itself. And so for us, a lot of it, our kind of immediate future is dependent on those borders and the decisions around that. And, I think a lot of us are hopeful that in December, we're going to start to see a bit more of a national approach to that. And look, not here to judge how various state governments have approached things, and they've made calls based on medical advice, right, that's relevant to them. So it is what it is, and I guess we've accepted that to a degree. And I guess one of the benefits that we do have as a company is that we have this vacation ownership arm. So that is, it's in effect, the ability to lock in your vacations for life. And so we've already got a great, committed, passionate customer base who value our product and our resort offering, and so they're itching to come back to the resorts, right? So Port Douglas, for example, right now, for Queensland travellers, and I think maybe now ACT, it's happening up there. We've got good occupancy, and we're doing pretty well from a profitability perspective. It's just we want that holistic approach, right? I mean, once Victoria's back where it needs to be, and those borders start to break down, we can start to look more like our pre-COVID operation. But until then, we won't have that. So I guess that's one thing that is the immediate focus. But we're really looking at innovation and business improvement. And I guess just the future. I mean, you hope these are once in lifetime events, right? In terms of the experience we've all had with it, but who's to say there isn't something else major that happens, right? And so I guess as a business, it's maybe a wake-up call for any company that you kind of got to be prepared for that, and start to think about, again, just continuous improvement, innovation. What can you be doing differently to transform your business, and to maybe repel difficult times and prepare yourself for those things as well. So I think that's probably our focus. But look, from a people perspective, that's business and the operational side. From a people perspective, we just want to continue what we're doing. Our mental health focus, it's part of our HR mantra, day in and day out in our operating model, right, as a team. And so that is every conversation, every initiative, everything we're rolling out or delivering for the business has a slant around mental health and what impact might it have on people. So we're looking to embed that further, take it to the next level. And I think it's about, just trying to identify and define what what our culture as an organization is going to be moving forward. I think most companies they have to think about recasting what their purpose is and what it is to be an employee within an organization, purely because we've had such a big disruption this year. So I think it can present a really good opportunity to really have a long, hard look at yourself as a business and say, well, is our purpose what we say it is? Do we actually live and breathe that? If we don't, you should be something different. And I think, our team members are probably looking to the company in the near future to provide a little bit more clarity about what that's going to look like moving forward. Hey, we're guest focused, we're hospitality people. That will never change, but maybe that broader culture and what we stand for, there could be a little bit of room to do more in that space, I think, which is exciting.
Sounds very exciting, actually. So I've been privileged today to spend some time with a deep thinker. I can hear that you're passionate about what you do, Simon. You've got a great team around you. It sounds like the organisation's really had a pretty sophisticated perspective on things. People are a very important asset to the business, not just saying it, but really living and breathing it. So kudos to you, kudos to the organisation. And it has been a real privilege spending time with you. I think anybody who's stayed with us this long can understand one of the reasons, or the reasons, they can understand the reasons why Simon and his team, Simon representing the team, has been nominated as the Australian HR Manager of the Year. And I'm looking forward to hearing, Simon, whether you've got the actual accolade, but it really doesn't matter whether you get the accolade or otherwise. As we talked about at the beginning of today, it's really not about the Guernsey, it's about getting in that esteemed class. And so I'm looking forward one day to come out to Queensland again. When
Greg, you're welcome anytime. When
the borders
respective state premiers make some decisions, make
some damn decisions, absolutely. But I'm looking forward to staying in the properties, and I'm also and experiencing that Wyndham Destinations difference about that which you've described. Before we wrap up, I do want to say thank you. You would have seen my little bobblehead here. A lot of people actually know that who get coached by me. A mate of mine bought this for me, but I think it's a fantastic bit of likeness to me. But I did want to actually just say that hot off the press today, I got that. I've written my third book, and I'm very proud of that. So if you want to, going to have a natural plug here. That's Career Networking. It's written by yours truly, and it's how to unlock the hidden job market. I've been teaching this to lots of the people that we've been going through as participants through our outplacement program and the like. And Simon's part of my network. If you want to be introduced to Simon at some particular point, happy to do so. But I do want to thank you very, very much, Simon, in all seriousness. Whilst I was joking around with this guy, I really valued today's discussion.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. And it is a very good likeness to you as well.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
Yeah, and definitely looking forward to welcoming you to Queensland when you can. I mean, we're sitting here right now. It's, I think, 26 degrees outside. Sun's out. Beach is warm. It's definitely a place you want to be.
Rub it in. Well, I'll say that we actually in Sydney today had an amazingly beautiful late spring day. Bodes well for a beautiful summer. Which is fantastic. So anybody in the Northern Hemisphere listening to this, sorry, but we are going to warmer months. You guys going to cooler ones. Again, thank you so much, Simon, for spending some time with me, and I look forward to keeping in touch.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, and thanks, listeners, for tuning in.
Thank you for listening to the Start Strong, Finish Strong podcast. If you enjoyed listening, please like and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Share the podcast with your teams, and of course, we'd love you to leave a comment or review.